Good morning, guys. So I told you that we were going to continue our conversation about slope and that I was going to make a video for you, so here it is. I know slope is something that you've seen before. You guys already told me that slope is also known as M. It's also known as rise over run. Well, it's also known as the change in Y over the change in X. And what I mean when I say the change in Y over the change in X is that it's the change in the Y values, or the difference between Y values over the difference between X values. So if you wanted to kind of add that as a note, that word change, it means difference, right? We're going to subtract two Y values, and then we're going to subtract two X values. And that is that distance where you ran or you rise from point to point versus, and then over how you run from that same point to the other point. Okay, so first we're going to look at finding slope from a graph. To calculate the slope of each graph, you're going to need to make sure that you have 2 points. Doesn't matter where those 2 points are, but those points have to be at one of those pretty little intersections on the graph. If your line goes like this, where it's not through the intersection, or it's like that right below it, that does not work. Okay, it needs to go straight through in order for that to be considered a point. That's just a lovely reminder. You want to deal with whole numbers here. Now, if it's on the line, it is a point, but it's just not going to be a pretty number. So let's deal with pretty whole numbers and make sure that we do them at the little intersections. So on this first graph over here on the left, I'm going to find 2 points. Now, I could label multiple. I could kind of put dots at each of them, but and I might do that, but all I need is 2 in order to find the graph. So it kind of look like I have a point right here at the top. And it looks like I have another one on the y-axis. And then if that is working out, then I should have another one. I do. Right about there. But again, we only need 2. So we could have stopped there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick 2 of those. I'm going to pick the first 2 that I drew, and I'm just going to count the rise over the run. Before I've even started, hold on, I'm going to pause. What direction is my slope going? Is it a positive slope, a negative, 0, or undefined? Hopefully I can tell pretty quickly that it is not undefined or 0. Okay, if you remember from yesterday, we talked about undefined being a vertical slope, and slope of 0 is a horizontal line. Just refer to that front page if you needed a refresher. So it's either going to be positive or negative. Now remember that we read graphs from left to right. And when I read it from left to right, that graph looks like it is going down, it's decreasing. That means I should have a negative slope. Negative slope. So I'm going to put that reminder up there for me, just so I know that when I write down my m equals at the end, I'm going to make sure that value is negative. All right, so here we go. I'm going to find m. I'm going to count the rise over run. So starting at my point on the left, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So that now we are in line with where my new point is. And I went down from that point. That's actually where we're going to get how it's negative. Okay. But as long as you have the count, that's good. And then that is my rise. So if I want to write that down there, my rise is negative 4 or 4. And my run is 1, 2, 3. That's a positive 3 because I'm moving to the right. So my slope should be negative 4 over 3. That cannot be simplified, but we would if we need to. And so that is actually my answer. My slope is negative 4/3. Okay. Now I could write that with the negative on top. I could write it with a negative in front. I could write it with a negative on the bottom. Okay. As long as either the numerator or the denominator is negative, that's going to give me a negative slope. But that's why at the beginning, honestly, I told you, write down that slope is negative, so we can make sure that we end up with a negative slope. That allows you guys to actually just count these 2 values the rise and run and not really worry about the signs. You could just count, okay, 4 and 3, and then, okay, 4 over 3. Oh, gotta be negative. And so you just make it negative. Okay, but that is our final answer right there, guys. That slope is -4/3. Well, let's look at the one right to the right of it. This one actually gives us 2 points already. So we're going to count rise over run. To get from the first point on the left to the next one, it is up 1. So my rise will be 1. Oh, what did we forget to do? I'm going to forget to do it. I hope you don't forget to do it. Okay, take a look at just the direction of the slope. This one is positive. It's increasing from left to right. So our slope should be positive. Okay, so we've gone up 1, and now we're going to go to the right 1, 2. That's another +2, so our run is +2. That, again, cannot be simplified, so our slope, m equals 1/2. Okay, just counting the rise and then the run. It's always rise over run. All right, we got 2 more graphs on here. Let's check out and follow what type it could be. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it undefined? Or is it 0? Okay, this one is a vertical line. It goes straight up and down. And I'm going to notice that if I tried to count my rise, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it doesn't go over any, which means my rise over run is 5 over 0. You can't divide any number by 0. Do it in your calculator. It won't work. You can't put 5 in 0 groups. That is why a vertical line is an undefined slope. All right, that is your answer. Let's look at this one. Oh, I see it right here. Here's my line. That is a horizontal line, and I know that horizontal lines have a slope of 0, so m is going to equal 0. Let's talk about why, though. If we go up and put 2 points anywhere on it, let's just put them here and here. Okay, I can't count any rise, right? My rise, it doesn't go up any. It's on a horizontal line. So my rise is 0, and I've gone over 1, 2, 3. Well, 0 over 3. Anything like 0 divided by any number is going to be equal to 0. And that's why the slope of a horizontal line is 0. Now let's review slope from a table. Remember that slope is m, it's rise over run, but it's also the change or the difference in y over or divided by the difference in x. When we say rise over run, we're meaning rise divided by run. The change in y divided by the change in x. That's what that division line means, okay? And change in y over change in x is going to be really important when we're looking at the tables because we're looking at the difference from one y value to the next and from one x value to the next. But remember, the change in y, the rise, is always going to come first or on top. So to calculate the slope of each of these tables, let's first look at this vertical table. Okay, and I'm going to just find out what is the difference from 27 to 19. I always start with the y value because that is what goes on top. Right, so we're going to have m equals something over something else. How do we get from 27 to 19? I can just type that in my calculator. What's 27 minus 19? Just like that. 27 minus 19 is 8. I'm putting minus 8 because it's going down 8, right? It got smaller, right? That was a decrease. It went from 27 to get to 19. You had to subtract 8. And you're going to see that pattern. 19 from 11, it's going down by 8. And from 11 to 3, you're subtracting 8. Okay, now the pattern isn't always going to be the same, but the ratio will be, meaning they will be equivalent. If it is not going down by the same number, it will at least be able to be simplified to that same number. Okay, now that we have our rise of going down 8, let's check out our x's. Our x's are increasing. I can see that right off the bat. It's going from 3 to 5 to 7 to 9. Let's just see how much it's increasing. To get from 3 to 5, what are we increasing by? Well, 2. And it's actually 2 each time, which is good because that should match up since we had decreasing by 8. All right, so let's put divided by 2 on the bottom here. So now our slope is negative 8 divided by 2. Well, we can simplify this, so we need to simplify. Okay, always simplify if possible. Simplify. All right, that's something we should always check. Negative 8 divided by 2, we can put that in our calculator, is negative 4. Or negative 4 over 1, meaning our rise would be down 4 to the right 1. But it could also be up 4 and to the left 1. Okay, that's our slope value. Let's look at this next table. This table is horizontal, but we're still going to look at the y values first and then the x values. Oh no, I don't see any y. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Remember that f of x means y. So those are our y values. So let's look at how do we get from negative 1 to 9? Plus 10. Okay, and if you want, you can always take like 9 and subtract negative 1 from it. That's going to help get you that value. Okay, but I noticed from negative 1 to 9, it's increasing. So it's going to have to be adding. From 9 to 19, it's increasing. And from 19 to 29, it's increasing. And it's going to have to be a positive value. You only need to look at the change between just one of them, though. Sometimes I just like to check the rest of the values in the table just to be sure. But you only need to check one. And then from negative 4 to 0. Okay, I'm not exactly sure. I think that's increasing, negative to 0. But I'm going to keep checking. 0 to 4, that seems to be increasing. Okay, and 4 to 8. So it's increasing as well. Let's see how much it's increasing by. To get from negative 4 to 0, you have to add 4. So that is my run, 4. So now my slope is 10 over 4. Once again, we can simplify. We can just put that in our calculator. 10 divided by 4. We want to leave it as a fraction because rise over run is a fraction. And if we needed to graph, it's going to be so much easier to graph if it's already a fraction and already in that rise over run form, okay? We can actually divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2 in this case, and that's going to simplify it for us if we didn't put it in our calculator to 5 halves. So that is our slope. One last thing, if you're calculating slope from 2 points, you can use this formula. It is given to you on your reference sheet. It's just telling you to take the difference between your y values, or the change from one y value to another y value, and divide it by the change or the difference in the two x values. It's just a different way to write change in y over change in x. It's actually showing that you're finding that difference like I told you. Here's the cool thing though, you could just create a tiny table, right? You have 2 points. You could just say, all right, x, y. Let me plug in my points, negative 2, 4, and 10, 0. And you can now find, okay, to get from 4 to 0, that's minus 4. So that is my rise. And to get from negative 2 to 10, that's plus 12. And then simplifying my slope, there, my rise over run, that is negative 1/3, so that is my slope. Okay, you can definitely find the slope that way, even if you're given 2 points. In fact, sometimes that's the easiest thing to do if you are really good at finding the difference and how you get from 4 to 0 and negative 2 to 10. But you can also use this formula up here. Okay, so in this last one, I'm going to show you how to use it. Most important thing that I like to do first is I take those points, the negative 3,3 and the 7, 12, and I label them. I'm going to label them, one as my 0.1 and then 0.2. It doesn't matter which one's 0.1 and which one is 0.2, but it does matter which is your x and your y. Your x always comes first. So if I decide that negative 3 is going to be 0.1, then my negative 3 is going to be x1, and my other negative 3 is going to be y1. So I'm just labeling them, and that means 7 is going to be x2, and 12 is my y2. Not 12. Okay, now that I've done that, I just need to plug them into that formula. The y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, right? Because that's going to give us the slope. It's the difference in y values divided by the difference in the x values. I can just plug that in. My y2 was 12, so I'm going to write 12 minus my y1. My y1 is negative 3, so I'm saying minus negative 3. Remember, when you have minus a negative number, that means plus. So you could change that to a plus sign. But if you type it into your calculator, it will work just like that. Okay, and then my x2 was 7 minus, again, a negative number, so negative 3. Again, that means plus. But if you typed this entire thing right there that I boxed into the calculator, it will completely solve and simplify it for you correctly, as long as you make sure you put minus the negative each time. Now, we're going to keep going, though, by hand. 12 plus 3, or minus negative 3, is 15. And 7 minus negative 3, or 7 plus 3, is 10. Simplifying that now, 15 divided by 10, each of those numbers can be actually divided by 5, 15, and 10. So it's going to simplify to 3 halves. That is our slope. Okay? So you can kind of use the formula. You can use a tiny table, whatever works for you. Okay? Ask Mr. Branch if you have questions, or I will see you on Monday. Feel free to send me an email as well, okay, guys, if you need any help. And do not forget to do your weekly reflection.